since November 28, 2012. It was the day 26-year-old Emma Fillipoff disappeared.
10 years since Emma Fillipoff went missing in downtown Victoria.
Emma, you are so loved, and you are so missed.
Emma was last seen in Victoria, British Columbia, on November 28, 2012, in front of the Empress Hotel. She was talking to two police officers who had been dispatched after an acquaintance called 911. Because he was worried about her mental state after spotting her hesitantly standing at a street corner clutching her shoes and looking paranoid. After walking with her, he realized that something was off and went to a nearby cafe to call for help.
Help me!
What happened next has been reported countless times in newspapers, blogs, TV
Emma
news,
Fillipoff went missing
and reports. After allegedly talking to Emma for 45 minutes, the two cops were satisfied that she was no danger to herself or others, and moved on to other pressing matters. She was never seen again. Before we dive in this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Emma was born on January 6, 1986, near Perth, Ontario. Her family consisted of two brothers, one sister, a mom who was a popular teacher and a father who was a part-time artist. She was described by her mother as shy, quietly happy, and content with a cascading laughter. Contrary to her athletic siblings, she excelled in the arts and chose dancing instead of sports. There was never one competitive bone in her body. Her parents' divorce was not only painful, but became a hardship because her mom, Shelley, literally lost it, and would not accept that her husband had left her for a younger woman. She suffered a mental breakdown that lasted 3 years, and even attacked her ex with a knife. Sadly, Emma was the one who had to call the cops on her mother. In the midst of the divorce, her father confided in Emma and she felt compelled to support him, which caused lasting friction with her mother. Emma was a listener, but felt that nobody was there for her, which probably was because her secret nature did not allow others to penetrate her shell easily. Always the free spirit, she left home at 16 to live with a friend's family because she would not accept curfews and rules. When she realized that her friend's mother also had rules, she moved out and lived with a platonic boyfriend who was 10 years older than she was. After quitting regular school, she attended a special program where she excelled. Her good grades allowed her to get grants to study culinary arts in Campbell River and to attend photojournalism school in Ontario. She spent a short time teaching English in China and went to live in Nova Scotia for a while to be with her sister. It was the beginning of her adventures. She was eager to see the world and to leave Lanark County behind. She loved her family and was close to her little brother she helped raise and care for, but she needed to spread her wings and fly. She studied in Campbell River, BC, and ended up working at a local pub. We know that she had a steady boyfriend during her stay, and that the relationship became complicated. I am surprised that nothing was ever said on the subject. Her childhood friend said that
Emma is the type of person that if she was in the room, half the room would be in love with her in a minute. She has the brightest smile. She's very quiet, but is also constantly laughing. So there's something about her that draws you in. She has that spark.
She also strangely stated that as a young woman, her good looks made her the object of pursuits that hindered her quest for personal growth. I personally do not think that Emma's attractiveness was at the root of her problems or that young men do not face the same hurdles. Her personality and woes had nothing to do with feminist rhetoric, but way more with sense and sensibility and a budding mental disorder. Maybe it explains why we hardly hear of her romantic relationships once she arrived in Victoria, even if I believe that it could be one of the important missing links. She went back to Perth for a short while after leaving Campbell River, and eventually moved on to Victoria Island. Emma was a nature lover and she was known to walk for hours in the forest barefoot, and to avoid nightclubs or being part of the urban crowd. When Emma landed in Victoria, she had arranged to stay with an old friend called Michaela and had a vague plan. Michaela was a law student who at the time lived with her boyfriend. She had offered Emma shelter for a few months, and she ended up staying with them from October until December 2011. She also eventually lived in an apartment in the same building. That's when Michaela and her boyfriend noticed the change in Emma. She would declare that she was drawn to Victoria because it was the center of something important. She had no clue what, but believed that it was meant to be. During that period, she did not look for work and spent most of her time walking with very little sleep. They also noticed that she did not eat very much. Her friend became worried because she walked for hours and compulsively picked up leaves along the way to redistribute them. She would come home with rocks and other nature's artifacts that she would lay on the table and seemed intent on rearranging in a creative way. Michaela noticed that Emma seemed to feel more compelled than enthused to go on these lone strolls. One night, Emma shared a poem with them, and as she was reading it, she was shaking and crying.
Becoming light. Letting go of the body for the sky. Nowhere else to go but up. Over the rainbow. Heaven on earth.
She even communicated with Emma's father, James, to tell him how worried she was. He offered his daughter a plane ticket home, but did not seem too alarmed by this troubling situation. When Michaela moved to the Philippines for work, she basically had to leave Emma behind. She could never imagine what would become of her good friend while she was away. When she came back to Victoria in October 2012, she emailed Emma but had no clue she was now living in a shelter. When Emma was still in Perth, she encountered a French guy named Julian H who became her walking companion. They had met at a music festival and started hanging out for a while, canoeing, walking mostly at night, and basically going along with Emma's spur-of-the-moment lifestyle. From the very beginning, it was clear that Julian was infatuated. Emma was beautiful, sensitive, talented, and mostly very unusual. She would bring her ukulele and continually strum the same chord when they would walk. She never asked any personal questions and seemed to live in the moment. Julian was from Quebec and he stayed in Perth for 2 years. After one of their long walks where he noticed that she wore the same pants every time, she put her head on his shoulder and he kissed her. She then held his hand. He was on cloud 9. But the day after, she realized that it was a mistake and told him in no uncertain terms that she did not want to see him again or pursue a relationship because she was leaving town and did not want to get attached to anyone. Her reaction was abrupt and took Julian by surprise. He called her a few times to try to make sense of it, but she had her dad tell him to stop calling. His reasoning was that they could simply remain friends. Strangely, she called him again and declared that she did not like the way she had handled the situation and wanted to pay him a visit for a chat. She did, and after a 30-minute conversation, they parted as friends, and he felt better about it. Case closed. Even though Julian was accused of chasing Emma, it was she who showed up again at his door to ask him to go for a walk. They claimed that he followed her to Victoria a few months after she left, when in fact, he moved there 14 months later after carefully considering several other options where he could ride his bike and manage to secure a job and some living arrangement. He did not have a car and Victoria offered the opportunity to ride his bike, walk and paddle all year. As he said on the show, maybe on an unconscious level he was hoping to see her again, but his decision was made according to personal considerations. Even if Shelley likes to speculate otherwise, Julian, who has been pretty straightforward during this saga, reiterated that all he knew was that Emma was on the West Coast. He never kept in touch with Emma and had no way of knowing if she was now married or involved in a relationship. One fine day, Julian saw Emma across the street in Victoria, and went to say hello. He said that she was happy to see him and gave him a hug. Her smile and warm welcome gave him the confidence to ask her to go for a bite after work, but she declined. He told her where he worked and invited her to visit him if she felt like it. It is important to note that he did not go looking for her. He was taking a lunch break from work when she happened to pass by. He made a point of not asking her where she lived or worked because he did not want to sound pushy. There was a music festival coming up and against his better judgment, he sent Emma's father a Facebook message asking him to transmit the invitation on his behalf. To reassure him, he told him not to worry because he did not intend to stalk her like in Ontario. That was a big mistake that would come back to haunt him later when the unread message would be uncovered after Emma's disappearance. Being French, he had used the word stalk without a clear understanding of its meaning. This created a false perception of Julian that seems to persist to this day. The next 2 times he would see Emma on the street, she would be withdrawn and not interested in engaging in any conversation. The opposite of the smiling girl he had encountered earlier. During an encounter, she even seemed confused as who he was. The last time he saw her was on the morning of November 28, 2012. He was in the bus going to a government building to get his health card when he spotted her on the sidewalk. He was not even sure if it was her because she was wearing a big coat with a furry hood, and her hair was like a lion's mane. She was carrying many bags and looked lost. He got off the bus to go see her, and because he could not see her face unless he walked in front of her, he decided to go to his appointment. When he came out, he was surprised to see that the girl was still standing there, and decided to go check. After recognizing her, he asked if she needed to talk, but she shook her head no. After finding out that Emma was considered missing, Julian did not have to tell the authorities that he saw her at all, but he did. At first, he thought it was the 27th, but after checking his schedule he realized it was the 28th. He did not own a car and lived in a room he rented in a house owned by an adult. He had no game and no opportunity to take Emma or do her any harm. Emma did not own a cell phone and did not give her family any specific address. When she sent an email, it was optimistic and poetic. This is how they knew her to be, so they never questioned if she was doing well or not. Contrary to what was said on the Fifth Estate, Emma was in regular contact with her mom. While in Victoria, she lived on boats, slept in the forest and ended up staying at a shelter for women at risk for months. It was called the Sandy Merriman House. Maybe it was because she was lost, but nobody in her circle knew about it. A few days before her disappearance, she called her mom unexpectedly late at night, and told her to come and get her. She was crying and in a state of despair. But then, the day after, she would call and tell her not to come. She did that for a few days and finally, her mom Shelley decided to come anyway after calling back the number of Sandy Merriman that her daughter had used to call her. She thought it was the name of a friend, but was in for a shock when she realized that it was a shelter. The staff would not tell her anything about her daughter because of privacy laws, so Shelley decided to come check on her daughter. When her mom arrived in Victoria and headed to the shelter, she was told by the staff that Emma had not claimed her bed that night. She was spooked because the staff told her that her mom was coming. To this day, Shelley insists that she did not tell them that she was flying to Victoria. After leaving the shelter, Emma was spotted several times. People called the cops on a couple of occasions to report how weird she was, and when she met an acquaintance from the library, he decided to call 911 after spending 30 minutes with her because he felt she was in some kind of distress. Not the normal Emma he had spent time looking at books with. When he saw the cops show up, he left thinking she was okay. She told them and would be going to a friend's place. Her mother was very upset about this,
but Shelley Fillipoff says the officers should have used their common sense.
They just let her go off into the night. Well, what happens to a person who's that vulnerable, who's wandering around in the night? Truck drives by, she hitchhikes or doesn't, the truck pulls over and says, "It's midnight, there's this woman."
She was caught on camera twice on November 28, going to a 7-Eleven to buy a $200 credit card and later on, a prepaid cell phone. She kept peering through the door as if someone was watching her. Shelley also found out that after learning of her arrival, her daughter had taken a cab at 6:10 p.m. to go to the airport, but when the driver told her the fare was $60, she reneged and asked to be brought back at her initial point of departure. Once there, she asked him if she could remain in the cab and questioned what the sounds coming from his receiver were. She obviously did not intend to fly to Perth, and was trying to flee after learning of her mother's upcoming visit. The cops said that at first, she would only shake her head. She was also caught on video at the YWCA on November 20th as she was coming and going 6 times in a short period of time as if in a state of confusion. It did not look or sound good. The money in her bank account remains untouched to this day, and the cell phone she purchased was never activated. On the other hand, on December 5th, they found a man who was using her prepaid credit card to buy cigarettes on Sook Road. According to the police, the man told them that he had found the card near the Juan de Fuca Recreation Center, about 20 kilometers from the harbor where Emma was last seen. The man eventually reached out to Emma's mom 3 times to tell her that he did not give the cops that location. He was so drunk at the time that he did not know where he picked up the card or if Emma gave it to him. A witness saw Emma walk with an older man on the afternoon of November 28. On December 2nd, a woman who was taking photographs in the Inner Harbor reported seeing a young woman leaning against a wall smoking a cigarette. She came over and offered advice on the camera operation and how to frame the Parliament buildings in the background. The woman said that she was not acting in an odd manner, but asked her to repeat her name Emma Fillipoff 3 times, which she did. The woman found that a little peculiar, but it wasn't until a couple days later that she was watching the news and the Emma missing story came on. According to her mother, mental illness runs on both sides of Emma's family. After reading the thousands of letters and journals left by her daughter in her van, she realized that Em was suffering from serious mental deterioration and had been depressed and troubled for a very long time, and did not want to bother anyone with her pain. She realized the extent of her despair, but too late. Another strange element of this case is the emphasis on the photo of a guy who went into a shop in Gastown, Vancouver, and said that Emma was his girlfriend and did not want to be found because she hated her parents. On her computer, they found a note from Dead Emma. To everyone. From Dead Emma. Hello. I figure someone will be on this computer at some point and will read this. Okay, so I'm dead. Floating about on energy or not. Watching dying stars, reviving stars. And dreaming milky dreams and shadow dancing on your timelines, or whatever. Good luck every heart. I love you. Her mood fluctuated like the wind, and she could have written it on a bad day or simply because she knew that one day, someone would find her computer and it would mean that she was dead. Sorry, but none of her emails ever sounded like regular communications. Shelley remained in BC for a few months and visited friends and acquaintances or anyone who could have seen or talked to Emma. Billboards were erected on main roads and a reward of $25,000 was offered, but to no avail. If you found this video intriguing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more captivating content about the missing story.